Now you guys know how much we love our mini PCs here on the channel, and for a while now I've been looking for a case that has some specific features. And it's really strange how sometimes the most simplest of things is actually really hard to find. But today, I think we've actually found it in this. So I've been looking for a case for a while now that has some specific features. A mini ITX case that is not only clean in terms of design, but also accepts some of the components that I actually want to install. So when I saw one of these on Amazon, I got really excited, and then they went out of stock. And I wasn't sure when they'd actually return. It's not a brand that I know that well, and in actual fact, the branding on the box is not even the branding that it's advertised with. And I kind of forgot about it for a while until I got that notification of stock. And of course, I had to jump on it because this case is actually pretty cheap. The features that I actually want in a case are actually, they're not specifically unique by any demand. There are cases out there that kind of fit their needs. I wanted the ability to fit a flex power supply, obviously a mini ITX board. I wanted something that would actually fit a low profile graphics card in, not a high profile one. And of course, I needed something of a clean design. And I like the fact that sometimes when cases are actually horizontal and not vertical, they actually fit much better in things like entertainment cabinets. So I was on the lookout for one of these. And of course, you can get cases that kind of meet that criteria, but they tend to be really expensive. Now, this case is actually really super cheap. And when you actually look at it, it's so simple that I can't believe other people are not kind of making these kind of things. As you can tell from the box, it's a pretty small case, and what's inside is no different. It's actually got some weight to it though, which is quite surprising considering this is supposed to be made out of aluminium, which is quite weird. I'm assuming that the actual chassis itself is steel, but the plating is supposed to be aluminium, but I'm sure we'll get into that in a minute. And this is it. This is the Goodisory. I'm not exactly sure if I pronounced the branding correct because on the box it obviously says XP Box Mini HTC case, but it is the Goodisory A02 and it's actually pretty smart looking. I love how clean the design is, and it's actually super cold because of the aluminium, so it's going to keep your system pretty cool. It's got lots of different features in there and we'll go through them as we go along, but I actually love how compact this is and all the features that it actually provides. Digging into the case a little bit more, it's a very simple design all through. You've actually got separate plates on all of the fronts and sides, and you simply remove them by just taking out the 4 screws in the corner. This will actually get the top off, and then we can have a look inside to see what kind of things we get in there. Now, once you've removed the 4 screws, the top will actually simply just lift off, and there we have it. It's actually a super thick piece of aluminium. It's extremely rigid, you're not going to be able to bend this, and it has this beautiful brushed kind of steel look to it, even though it is in black. They do these in silver, so you can get them in silver and they look like a brushed aluminium kind of colour, but I actually love how simplistic it is in terms of design. Before we take a look into the middle, let's take a look around the outsides. On the front here, we do have another piece of aluminium across, and this is actually even thicker than the top itself, which is probably where a lot of the weight's coming into it. The aluminium is generally quite light, but I think in this kind of compact form, you're expecting lighter than it really is. On the front, we have a power switch. Now that is a clicky switch. It's not a push in or anything, so that's nice. And it kind of blends in with the texture of the case itself. We do have a seam line that runs down the middle there, which kind of gives it a nice little bit of texture, but at the same time keeps the front really clean, and that's exactly what I wanted. We also have 2 USB 3s in the front there, and we have a headphone jack and a microphone jack. So that is everything that you kind of possibly need. Obviously it is missing things like USB-C, but that's perfectly fine for the price. Taking a look inside the case, we obviously have some paperwork here, which just kind of tells you how to take it apart, which is always interesting when they put it on the inside. And then we have this beam going across the top here, which is like an extra strengthener, but we'll remove it. And you can also install your hard drives and SSDs on it. Now, the build that I actually want to do in this eventually will obviously use M.2 drives, so I probably don't need this. I'll probably just leave it in just as that kind of strengthener really, but there it is. It's a piece of steel. You can tell that it's much more flexible than the rest of the case, and it has all the holes in it needed to mount a hard drive or an SSD. We also have inside the cabling to the front panel, we have a USB 3, we have the front I/O, and we have the audio, the HD audio, and a little bag of screws so you can put it all together again. It is a shame that they provided silver screws with this, considering that the case is black and it looks gorgeous in the black, but we can always replace them because we've got plenty of them about. The cables are not that long, so you have to be kind of careful what you're doing, but effectively your mini ITX board will fit in here. your power supply is going to fit at one side, and then your graphics card's going to fit in the other. You can also remove the sides by just taking a look at the sides here. We've got extra screws in the corner, so you can remove those panels too. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but obviously it's part of the design. And then on the back, we've got the most important things that I actually wanted in this build, the different types of ports that support the things that I want. So here you're going to be able to fit your flex power supply. You're going to be able to fit up to a dual slot low profile graphics card. Now they don't really make that many low profile graphics cards, particularly high performing ones, but you can get away with something like a GTX 1650 that will play games perfectly fine. Or you can fit something like an RX 6400. Now obviously if you're fitting an RX 6400 in here, you're going to have to be careful on the motherboard and CPU combination because you'll want something that supports PCI Gen 4. We also have a piece of shield here for where your IO shield's going to go. And then as an extra, you've got an extra length here for something like a PCI card or a graphics card if you can find a single slot one. So you've kind of got that flexibility as well. Now the card that you do fit in this top shield obviously will need to be something extremely thin because it's going to be over the top of the CPU. If we imagine the CPU cooler is going to be somewhere in the middle here, and there's no space at all for an AIO in here, the card is actually going to sit over the top. So you've got to make sure that you've got that kind of stuff there. There is also an additional space on the inside that's just in here where you can fit an extra SSD. It actually mounts into the front and then you can just screw it down into the side there. So it kind of does float a little bit, but it does have a little bracket on the edge there that the drive can actually sit against. And because they're not mechanical, they're not really going to move anywhere. When it comes to cooling, obviously the case has lots of cooling ports. We've got ventilation on the sides. We've also got ventilation in the top. We've got the top panel where we can actually get some ventilation holes here for any kind of air intake. And of course, we have the extra mounting fixings on the side for up to two 80mm fans. Now, that means that this case has actually got some pretty decent cooling for the size of it. It is extremely small and extremely clean. It's exactly what we've wanted for a while. And I'm sure we'll really find that out once we start to put a build in it. But I'm actually super impressed with this case. It is made out of super strong material. It's not flexible at all. And it only cost me £55. I can't believe that I managed to pick a case up that has aluminium panels with the clean designs and all the features I want for £55. Usually the cases that you do find in this kind of size really tend to be the more tower type. And they're not bad because often they have the extra PCIe extensions so that you can have the graphics card on the other side, and they get really, really compact, but I didn't actually want something like that. I wanted something that went extremely flat, just like that, with some nice little feet on the bottom, which kind of add to it, to kind of look a little bit like a games console, but also fit very nicely into a living room setting. And I think this is going to be perfect. So now that we've taken a look at the features of the case, of course, we're going to want to put something in it just to see how well the build process is and see how easy it is. So I'm going to go gather up some parts and then we'll actually put a quick build together so you guys can see what it looks like when everything's in the case. And there we have it, the little system is built. The components that we've actually installed into this are not going to actually remain in here, they're just a bit of a demo for you guys. But for anyone that's interested, we installed an Asus Prime A320IK. Now I have had this board forever and it's just been my lucky trusty board, so it just works with everything. And of course we installed a Ryzen processor. The processor that's in this motherboard now is the Ryzen 5 3600. It is only a 65 watt processor, so that's pretty low, and any kind of flex PSU should be able to cope with it. The power supply that we fit in here is actually a very cheap power supply. I think we paid about £8 for this, but then we did a lot of modification to it. We painted it in black, we braided all the cables, and we also fit the Noctua mod on it. So it's got a Noctua fan, it is super silent. That is one of our favourite pieces in the studio, strangely enough, because we modified it up. We use it for lots of different things. And the power supply may actually stay in this little case. It is a 250 watt gold rated, or we might have a bit of a look around and see what else we can find out there. In terms of the graphics card, we have of course installed a low profile graphics card. Now this is a GTX 750 Ti, so it's a very low power graphics card and it'll go perfectly with this system. It's not the best, and like I said before, we'd probably install something like an RX 6400. It would be nice to see if we could get an RTX A2000 because they are super fast and very, very efficient, so they'd fit perfectly in something like this. But there are a couple of features that we haven't finished off yet, and of course the first one is this bracket. Now we didn't install this bracket because we wanted to show you guys what it kind of looked like once you've got everything installed, but it will fit perfectly fine on there. Obviously if you've got a hard drive mounted on the back of it with the cooler that we're using, which is the standard Wraith Stealth cooler, it fits perfectly fine in the case with the bracket on, and it's going to give plenty of airflow. Unless you've got a hard drive or something mounted here, you're going to need something a much more lower profile. And that also goes for if you are going to be installing a graphics card or something of a single slot in the top here. That is pretty close to that cooler, so you'll want something a little bit shallower. We also haven't installed the top, and there is a reason for that, and it is one of the issues with the case. If you actually take a look at the side here, you can see that there is a cable that's sticking over the top, which is not allowing us to fit the lid. Now I could push that cable down. It is for the USB 3, and the problem we've got is where it is mounted on the motherboard, which is just about here there. The cable is very rigid and it won't bend very much. It's a real shame when they do this in tiny little cases like this. What we really need are cables that are extremely flexible so that we can actually mount them round places, just like the one on the power supply. They're very flexible cables with just a bit of braiding over the top, so you can bend and flex them in any way that you want. But if I bend this cable down now, it's actually going to be pulling on the motherboard. Now, I could squish it and put some cable ties on it and it will be perfectly fine, but I wanted to show you guys that just in case you do go out and buy one of these and you suddenly run into an issue. It may be perfectly fine with a different motherboard, but the one that we've got, and USB 3s generally tend to be in the same place, it's obviously causing an issue. Now, of course, we've tested that everything fits in and it's going to fit in perfect. Like I said before, these are not the components we're going to be doing. We're actually going to be trying to do something really super special in this case, and I've already run through a couple of potentials. But if you want to make sure that you see what we do with this going forward, make sure you subscribe to the channel now and hit that bell notification so that you know when the video drops. For those of you that are wanting to look at this case, we're going to leave a link in the description below to its Amazon listing. They do it in a black or a silver, so you can decide whichever one you want, and they do run around £55. I think the silver version was £56, but that's only £1 difference. I'm not sure why. Maybe more people want the silver version, and it does look pretty smart, but we opted for the black because this is actually going to be used somewhere specific and I wanted a black one. I'm actually pretty impressed with the case, of course, for the price, because it is super cheap, it is super durable, and it gives me everything that I need. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Do you actually like this kind of case? Is it something that you would buy if you were trying to build a little tiny PC to go underneath your television? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, and where we have a play with different types of little mini ITX cases. We also do big ones for anybody that's really interested, and we'll catch you in the next one.